Good morning, everybody. It looks like we have just started getting some people online, so we're going to give it just a couple of more minutes before we get started. And thank you all for being here. All right, thank you all again for being here. Just waiting for a couple more people to log in. It looks like I had somebody fall off and want to make sure we don't miss anybody. So we'll go ahead and get started in just a couple of minutes here. Again, I appreciate all of you being here. For those of you who are getting on, if you would please just go into the chat box and leave your name and property so I can take attendance for us. Welcome, Mr. Schmidt, again to your second training this week. Welcome back, Ebony, Brian, DeShayla, Brandy, Edita for the first time. Awesome. Thank you for being on. I appreciate that. Welcome back, Debbie. And welcome in Dan for the first time. I know Wallace, you're out there as well. If there's anybody who's logged in and is having difficulty leaving comments in the live chat, you can also just email me to let me know that you're here. I know I had a couple of people who had a hard time yesterday. And again, if you haven't filled out the Google form yet, please take an opportunity to do that. I'll use that as we go through the training today as examples while we're going through. So if you would please just make a note to take care of that. All right, so again, we'll give it just a couple more minutes and we'll go ahead and get started. And thank you all for being here today. Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. This is the final of our 3 sessions for reputation management training. So once you have completed this, you are officially a trained, up-to-date reputation champion. After this call is over today, you're going to be getting some resources that we've discussed over the past 3 calls. You'll get the Word document version of our review response template. You'll also get the login matrix for you to keep track of all of your logins, and I'll also be sending you the links to all of the review sites. In addition to that, I'll be reaching out to each property. If you're new to the program, I'll be reaching out to you to set up our first 3 monthly calls and then the quarterly calls that will follow that. If you've been in the program before, we will make sure that your quarterly calls are up to date. And then you'll all be getting an invite over the next few weeks for our first Reputation Champion, the Reputation Call of Champions. For the social media people, I call it the Social Media Call of Champions. So you are champions, and it is a call to all of you. So we're going to go ahead and get started today. I just wanted to take the opportunity to wave to any of you. If I haven't met you before and this is the first time you're on one of these live sessions, thank you so much for being here. And if I have met you before, then it's nice to digitally be in your presence for a little while. Today's going to be a little bit more collaborative than what we've had historically. We're going to go into a live demonstration of responding to some reviews, and I'll ask you to use the live chat feature to provide responses to some of the reviews so we can look at that together. So please be prepared to do that. Just be aware that I'll be putting a call out for that. And there is a delay from when I say something to when you actually get it. There's about a 30-second delay, and maybe a little bit more than that. So just be prepared that there will be a little delay from when you submit something to when I respond, and vice versa. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I have a few slides to go through. We'll talk about some best practices, and then we'll get into a little bit of a live training together and try some stuff out, some of the tools out together. So today's training is primarily, again, the goal for today's training is for you to feel more comfortable in actually responding to reviews. And I know that that can be a really difficult thing for a lot of us to do because we take things, we can take things kind of personally. So again, today's goal is for you to have a clear understanding of appropriate review responses, have comfort in responding to practice reviews, and have an understanding of the review response template. So one of the things that I asked all of you is what the LEARN model is. And most of you, actually all of you, had it perfectly right. So today we're going to do an overview which will cover the LEARN model. We'll go over the review response template, and then we'll dive into positive and negative reviews, and then I'll address any questions that you have. So we've already seen this before. We know the process for how to respond to a review from our first training. The review comes in, we investigate any claims that were made in the review, we post an appropriate response, and then we make any improvements based on that guest's feedback, and then we track our progress to make sure that we're actually having an impact. And there's also a response timeline when the guest review is posted. For positive reviews, which are anything that's a 4 or 5 star. If you're on a 10-point scale, of course, that would be any 8s, 9s, and 10s. Those get responded to within 72 hours. And then any neutral or negative reviews, you'd respond to within 48 hours. And to reinforce this again, the reason why Greenwood has opted to do this strategy is that our highest performing brands request this of their properties. So for any property that like IHG properties get charged, if they don't respond to neutral or negative reviews within 48 hours, and the brand has to respond on the property's behalf. So we want to make sure that every single property is up to that highest standard, to make sure that as those other brands come on board with those same expectations, that you're already meeting or exceeding the brand's expectations. So we talked a lot about the review sites yesterday because we went into the actual platforms, and there are really 3 types. The first is those actual review sites like TripAdvisor, Yelp, and well, TripAdvisor, Yelp, and like Marriott verified reviews and IHG guest reviews, where the sole purpose of that site is to share information about the business and collect feedback from customers. So it's really just about that one customer's experience. There are a number of benefits to those because you get really good unbiased feedback. But then there are also some negative sides of that. So with those online review sites, you don't necessarily know if those guests are verified travelers. For IHG and Marriott Verified, those guests have definitely stayed at your property. But like we mentioned yesterday, for sites like TripAdvisor and Yelp, if the guest called your hotel or dealt with reservations or walked by your property or met a staff member while they were at an event, technically, all of that stuff are things that they could respond for. So there's really no way to verify that that guest has actually stayed at your property, which could be a downside. We always want to stay as close to 100% review response rating as possible, but we don't always need to do that for other sites, but for these online review sites, we definitely want to. And again, we talked about this on day one, that people will read a management response with as much or more importance than the review itself. So an appropriate management response can make a big impact when a guest has seen a review from your property. So these reviews on these sites are not filtered, but they are pre-reviewed by each platform. And what that means is that it won't automatically pull reviews to the top based on whether it's positive or negative. If a site is going to sort them, it will be based on how helpful or how many likes that review has gotten. So in the case of Yelp, as an example, you can, as a user, you can designate a review that you've read as helpful, funny, whatever the case may be. So if the more people that interact with that review, the higher it's going to pull to the top of your listing when somebody goes to look at your site. It's not based on whether it's a positive or negative review. It's based on how many people have interacted with that. So just to be clear with that, there's no biased sorting on those sites. These reviews can often include photos, not for Marriott Verified or for IHG, but with TripAdvisor and Yelp, guests can post photos. As a matter of fact, now Yelp has integrated on their mobile application that when you go to check into a business, it immediately prompts you to add a photo at that moment. So guests' photos are appearing in all of those sites pretty regularly. Now, the nice thing about these sites is you can respond publicly, but oftentimes you can send a private message to that guest or user as well. In the case of Yelp and TripAdvisor, they have a user name, and you can respond to that user on TripAdvisor. And in the case of Marriott Verified reviews and IHG guest reviews, oftentimes, depending on the brand's regulations, oftentimes you'll be able to get that guest's email address or phone number and reach out to them directly offline. The next site that we'll talk about is travel agents, OTAs. This is a large percentage of our mix of reviews for most of our properties. Oftentimes, these review sites are making up more than 50% of the reviews that we get. So while these OTA guests, oftentimes they might not know if they're actually staying at our property, they might just be selecting a 3-star property in the city. And while they might not have clear expectations for what they would be looking for at the property, they make up a really vocal part of our customer base. Even if it only makes up a small percentage of your overall bookings and overall rooms at the property, those guests are really, really vocal. Those OTA sites like Expedia, Partner Central, and Booking.com, they love guest feedback and they thrive on that. So they push for reviews really, really regularly. Expedia even has this process now where if you're using the Expedia mobile application, somebody will check in with you. The app will alert you at every step of your process. So when you're due to arrive at the hotel, they'll ask how the arrival process was. Once you've checked in, they'll ask how the room was. And once you've departed, the app will also ask you how your stay was overall. And then they send you a follow-up email after your visit asking you to leave a review. So a large percentage of our mix of reviews. The nice thing about these reviews is that they are always left by a verified traveler. You can't just randomly go on to Booking.com or Expedia and leave a review for a property. You have to have stayed there. Another kind of positive side is that generally there are not photos posted from these reviews. So that can be detrimental if you've got some really great travelers who have beautiful photography coming in, but it can be positive if they've not had a great experience, or they found something in the room or at the hotel that they shouldn't have, or rather that we shouldn't have had be there. It might not be documented on those OTA sites. Okay. And the last part of that is social media reviews. So again, these, much like those review sites, these aren't always guests of the business. However, these are some of the most visible reviews out of any of them. The reason for that is if I leave a review on TripAdvisor, anybody going to TripAdvisor to look at your property has the potential to see my review. If you leave a review on an OTA site, anybody looking to book through Expedia who happens to find your hotel may see reviews for your business. But if we're friends on Facebook, you could see my review about this property. Regardless of whether you have any interest in it or not, it appears as visible to my entire network. So that's the one thing to be really cognizant about, is that it is much more visible than those other sites that we've spoken about. The other thing with social media is that the nice thing about it and the downside about it is that on sites like Twitter and Facebook, it's not just a review, it's a conversation. So if somebody leaves a review about your business, you have the option to reply, but then other people also have the option to reply to that review as well. So you may not be engaging with just the person who's left that review. Other people may be engaging with you as well. It's not even just a two-way conversation. It becomes an open forum for debate and discussion. They're also longer lasting as they are presented to potential guests who search for the hotel. So as an example, if I stayed at the Hilton Chicago in Oaklawn 5 years ago, and I left a great review, and then my friend Erin, or my cousin Erin, goes back to visit Chicago, when she lands at the airport and the geotag is there, it may pop up and say, hey, Emily has been to this city. She's left a review with this property. You should reach out to her and ask her what to do. So it will bring to the front of, or the forefront, that review, regardless of how old it is, again, because it's being deemed as relevant to my network of people or other travelers. And there's also a greater expectation for rapid response on social media. People expect a response on Twitter, as an example, in under 24 hours. And Facebook actually rewards businesses who are responsive to guests' comments and reviews and questions and messages. If you are deemed as very responsive if you have 100% of your comments responded to within 24 hours or less. Now, there are 5 steps to our review response process, regardless of the channel that we are responding on. And the first is listen. Now, we all know the LEARN model, as was demonstrated by everybody filling out the survey. You all know what the LEARN model is, but it can be really difficult to apply that to something in writing. So when we talk about the LEARN model and the listen part of it, what we would do first of all in listen is to read. So whatever the review length is, you want to make sure that you're really taking the time to read it. That's effectively the best way that you can listen to a guest when they're writing something, is to read it thoroughly. And to show that you've listened to the guest, verbally what you would do is say, I understand that blah, blah, blah. Or what I'm hearing from you is that this, this, and this. What you can do in writing is you can reiterate something that they've mentioned in their review, positive or negative. So if you had a guest who had responded to something at the property and they mentioned a staff member's name, sometimes all it takes to see that you've listened is to say, thank you so much for recognizing this person for the positive impact that they had. So again, listening is oftentimes in your review reiterating something that the guest left in their comment. And the bonus for that is that you can take your template and personalize it based on those things as well. So it's really hitting 2 birds with 1 stone. You're showing the guest that you're listening appropriately, and it gives you the opportunity to personalize a templated response. The next step is to empathize. And this is, again, to express understanding. So if it's a positive experience, it could, if somebody's talking about how helpful the shuttle was, you can say, we can appreciate how important convenience is when you travel. And we're glad that the shuttle was able to provide that for you. So to be able to empathize with them. And then, of course, in the sense of a negative review, if somebody had difficulty with hot water, we know that it's cold this time of year and that a warm shower after a long day is oftentimes just what you need. And we're so sorry that we weren't able to provide that this time. So again, to be able to empathize. This is a really, really key thing, because oftentimes the first thing that we want to do is say, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But I use a couple examples. If you have, if you're with a partner and if the dishwasher doesn't get loaded the right way, or let's say there's dirty dishes left in the sink all the time. If that person just consistently says to you, I'm sorry, I left the dirty dishes in the sink. I'm sorry, I left the dirty dishes in the sink. And you're like, honey, it's really annoying. I hate coming home to dirty dishes in the sink, whatever the case may be. And they're just apologizing. It becomes inauthentic when there's no action, or they're not taking the time to understand where you're coming from. Now, if your partner came to you and said, I know how important it is for you to come home to a clean house because it helps you be able to relax after a long, busy travel day. I'm so sorry that I didn't, whatever the case may be, clean the dishes, take out the garbage, do the laundry, whatever. It kind of sets you in a different place as the receiver of that apology, because you can see that they are taking the time to understand why you might be upset or frustrated about it. Now, of course, the follow-up to that, when you apologize, this doesn't always mean in a negative way. You can apologize, or you can appreciate. So once you've expressed understanding, you can apologize to the person for whatever may have happened. We're so sorry about your experience. Or you can share an appreciation. Thank you so much for sharing your positive feedback. Or it really means a lot to us that you took the time to recognize the staff member, whatever the case may be. So the A for apologize isn't just apologize. We're not always just going to be dealing with upset guests. This isn't always service recovery. Sometimes this is service reinforcement. So we want to apologize or appreciate what the guest has communicated to us. And then, of course, the next step is responding. Now, the biggest key to this is to be genuine when sharing actions based on feedback. So, as an example, if somebody is complaining about the pillows in your rooms, you don't just want to say, we really value your feedback, and then never do anything about it, or never communicate anything to the guest about it. Sometimes it's okay to take just a little bit longer to respond, or to get around to responding to that guest. If you're following up with your operations team, or your sales team, or your executive team to find a resolution, so that if somebody says, I hate the pillows in the room, you can say, I can appreciate how important a comfortable bed is after a long day. I'm so sorry that the pillows weren't up to standard. Please know that we are in the process of securing new bedding for the rooms, and we look forward to welcoming you back when those have been put in place. Or we look forward to providing a perfect night's sleep during your next visit. So again, you have the opportunity to respond both in the case of negative reviews, where somebody had something that they viewed as an opportunity for the hotel, and you also have the opportunity to respond when there's a positive review. So if somebody recognized a guest, and you can then say to that guest, or I'm sorry, if somebody recognized a staff member, if a guest recognized a staff member, you can say, we will recognize, or we'll be sure to reach out and let this staff member know about the positive impact that they had on your stay. Now, again, when I first talked about respond, I said that the most important thing is to be genuine when sharing actions based on feedback. So what that means is, don't lie. We need to maintain a strong level of integrity to our guests and within our property. If we say to a guest that we review every survey that comes in, you want to make sure you're actually reviewing every survey that comes in. If you say we will reach out to our management team to let them know about this so that they can look into it more, then do it. If you say we'll communicate with the front office so that this doesn't happen again, make sure you're sending an email. And if you feel as though you're coming up against a hurdle where you're not feeling as though it's your place to do that, or you're not feeling empowered to do that, reach out to me and let me know, because you should be supported enough at the property in this important role to be able to effect change at the property level to have a positive impact on our guest experiences. Okay, so once you've responded, you'd notify. So this means both internally and externally. When we're leaving reviews, notifying the guest could mean, again, we've made this impact. We look forward to welcoming you back is a way to notify them. We look forward to welcoming you back the next time you're in the city. We look forward to welcoming you back for your family vacation next year. We look forward to welcoming you back when we've had the opportunity to complete renovations. Or in the case of a negative review, notify could be, please know that we will reach out to you directly, or please reach out to us directly at this number. Whatever the case may be. So you want to give the opportunity for additional communication or additional interaction. Just like the same way that if a guest was on property and they communicated a difficulty to you, you resolve the problem, you'd want to call them back and say, Mrs. Smith, thank you so much for letting us know about the layout in your bathroom. Engineering just went up. They said that it was repaired. Please let us know if you have any other difficulties. So that's that step, that opportunity for additional communication. That's what we're taking right here. So again, you would invite the guest back or invite them to reply or reach out to you directly. Okay, so I'm going to take a quick look at our chat. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to let me know. Debbie mentioned that she's seeing 2 audio feeds at the same time, a couple of seconds between, and it's the same feed. Is anybody else experiencing that? And Debbie, if that's the case, it may be that you perhaps have the feed open on 2 channels, but if anybody else could confirm whether or not you're having audio issues as well. I'm going to give it just a couple of seconds for the delay. So is anybody else hearing 2 audio feeds at the same time? I'm not seeing anything come through just yet, Debbie. Brian says he's not having issues. The DoubleTree also mentions that they're not having issues either. So Debbie, perhaps it is, thank you everybody for responding. Debbie, perhaps it might be a browser issue for you. So perhaps if you close the training and relaunch it, it should clear that up for you. It's just a YouTube video like any other normal video should be. So it should just be, as long as it's just one page that's open, it should just be one audio stream. So again, Debbie, I'm sorry that you're having difficulty. Everybody's confirmed that they're not having those same issues. So just message me and let me know if you're still having it. And worst case scenario, you can always view the training later if you didn't have any audio issues that way. And it looks like Brandy mentioned that she had to open it in Google Chrome so that it would work for her. So perhaps that would help you as well, Debbie. Thank you for that, everybody. I appreciate that. Chicago also says to try Google Chrome. Okay. So since there are no other questions, the Learn model, again, for most of us is pretty basic. I just wanted to make sure that we had a clear understanding of how to apply that. So the review response template, which again, the link for that is in our comment stream, in our live comment stream. So you can open that up if you'd like to. The current review response template is actually broken down by section. It's broken down by listen, empathize, apologize, react, and respond, and notify. And the reason why I broke it down that way is to make sure that we don't miss any of those steps. There are a few things that you can do to make it a little bit easier. At the bottom, there's the option to create your own template. So if you don't have a pool, you're not ever going to need comments about a pool. But if you have ladybug issues, you might need to have that kind of in your back pocket. So anything that's reoccurring for you, you can add to your template for later use. One of the other things is you can use keyboard shortcuts to make it easier. I'm a big fan of Control Copy, so Control C and Control V for paste, or Shift Insert and Control Insert are copy and paste. So take a look at keyboard shortcuts if you've never used them before. It is amazing, as opposed to having to drag a whole section and then right click and hit copy and then go over and then right click and click paste. It makes it much easier. And the nice thing is that when you're using the Control Insert or the Shift Insert options, they work universally. Control Copy, so Control C and Control V, which is copy and paste, those work within the Windows world, but they don't always translate to some of the review sites that we work with, but Control Insert and Shift Insert would. Okay, so moving on, we have multiple types of reviews that come in. Neutral reviews are one of them, but primarily the ones that you're going to be dealing with are those major polarized reviews. Positive reviews where there's nothing you can improve, and negative reviews, which can be a bear, are some of the hardest to respond to. So I want to make sure that we cover how to respond to positive reviews and how to respond to negative reviews. And I know that some of you have mentioned that some of the difficulty that you've had has been those negative reviews, but also somebody had mentioned that the ones that are neutral. So those can be difficult to respond to as well. So we'll be sure to address all of those. Now there are 5 steps. Again, we talked about the LEARN model, which has 5 steps when actually responding. But when we're going through this process of responding to reviews, there's a few steps that we can follow in each review. So before we even respond, the process that we can go through. And the first is to read for understanding. And this can really, really help you with those neutral reviews. For understanding, again, take some time, read the review. Sometimes I'll actually, if it's a particularly biblical sized review, some people like to wax on poetically, I will actually copy and paste it to a different place and highlight different sections of it in a Word document. I'll just highlight or break apart different sections. That's a little bit more time consuming. You certainly don't need to do that, but at the very least, you want to make sure that you're reading for understanding. How was their check-in? How was their room? Whatever the case may be. What were the positives? What were the negatives? So those will help you kind of break apart the pieces. In a neutral review, this can be particularly difficult because people might not say a whole lot, or they might have had good aspects and they might have had bad aspects. So kind of how do you address that? So reading for understanding can really help with that. The biggest thing to take away is it's not personal. Do not take it personal. Be like a duck and let it roll off your back, put up your umbrella, walk away for a few minutes, especially with scathing negative reviews. It can be so difficult. I know for me personally, when I was working at the front desk and responding to reviews, if anybody said anything about service, I'm like, I'm here. We never do stuff like that. What are you even talking about? And it's really hard to step back and just be like, it's not personal. There's no need to get defensive. So if you ever find that you're having a difficult time with that, I have had general managers reach out when they've had difficulty responding to reviews. I've had front office managers reach out when they've had difficulty responding to reviews. I've had administrative assistants reach out. I've had to walk away from reviews countless times. So if you're ever having difficulty because you're finding that you're taking it personally, reach out and let me know. We'll talk through it. Sometimes it's helpful to have another person take a look at the review before you respond. Or if you've written a response before you post it, have somebody, this is the trick, have somebody read the response and not the review. And that will make sure that you aren't taking anything personally, because if you're coming across as defensive in the response, again, we don't want to do that. But if you're coming across as defensive in the response, that would indicate to me that you're probably taking it personally. So I've done that to myself before as well, where I'm like, oh, I'm having a really hard time with this. This is really tough. I walk away, I come back, I write a little review, and then I'm like, you know what? Before I put this out, I just need somebody else to take a look at it and make sure that I'm not being too bratty. And it can be really helpful. Also, again, respond with thanks, regardless of whether it's a positive experience or a negative experience that the guest is communicating about. It helps us be better. So we want to be happy and affirming and tail wagging to this guest. We want to be able to thank them for their feedback, because frankly, if we don't know what's going on, if nobody tells us anything, but they just stop staying with us, we're going to be like, why are we losing revenue? Why don't we have people staying with us? And we might never know. We will have no opportunity to improve. So we always want to share our thanks and gratitude for people taking time out of their busy days to share their experiences and oftentimes expertise with us. We're behind the desk a lot. We're in our rooms a lot. We're in our offices a lot. These guests, especially our business travelers, are traveling a lot more than we do. They've seen a lot of other hotels than we have. As long as we've been in the industry, they have more of a consumer understanding of our business. So oftentimes what we're getting from them is good expertise or good ideas out there. And this that's a good thing to do with your neutral reviews as well. Is the first step to any of those is to respond with thanks. Thanks for your time. Thanks for sharing your experience. And then address improvements. So this, again, this works really well for positive reviews, negative reviews, and especially those very tricky neutral reviews where there might be a little bit of good and a little bit of bad. And what I mean by address improvements is if you've done anything to stop a negative experience, or if you have done anything to help reinforce a positive experience, you want to make sure that you're addressing that. If you've been seeing consistent complaints about valet, initially you may be saying, thanks so much for your feedback. We'll share that with the management team. We value your comments and they help us to improve. But once you've actually been able to implement improvements, make sure that you're addressing it. Based on our guest feedback, we have secured a contract with a new valet team that we believe will be able to provide the same high level of service of our property ambassadors. We look forward to welcoming you back so you can be welcomed by our new team. And if it's been a positive experience, we have been getting so many great accolades about this ambassador. They were just recognized as Associate of the Month for June. So thank you so much for sharing that you've had such a positive experience with them. So again, address those improvements. And in those neutral reviews where sometimes there's a little bit of good and a little bit of bad, pull the good out first. Thank you so much for sharing your comments about the breakfast. We just added the waffle station. We're so glad to know that that's adding to the enjoyment of our guests in the morning, whatever the case may be. So pull those positives out, address the positive improvements, and then address the improvements that are still to come. With those negative reviews, again, it can be really hard to not take those things personally, but focus on the positive stuff that they're saying first. Pull that out, make it the forefront of your response. Again, our customers who are reading reviews are reading our responses as management more closely than the original review. So pull those positive things up first. And then take ownership. Again, this goes back to taking things personally as well. It can be really hard when it's something at your desk to be like, there's nothing wrong. Nothing needs to be done. And then there's also times where you say, well, that's a housekeeping thing. That's not me. Or, well, management didn't do anything about it, so it doesn't matter. But take ownership. Whether you are in a place at the property where you have direct control over those things, to the guest, when you're dealing with them externally, you're the face of the property if you're responding to their reviews. So at the very least, you have to be held accountable to that guest. So if you say that that a change is going to be made, follow up on it. Make sure that the change is actually being made. And this also goes back to negative experiences. This can be particularly difficult with many of us who are branded properties. A perfect example is the booking team. Your reservation team is not on property. Your reservation team is in Ottawa, Canada, or in some distant land in Maryland, or even across the globe. So you don't necessarily have direct control over what it is that they're communicating. Another great example that all of us deal with is those OTA sites. We don't have control over what Booking.com says when they're going through that process, or what Expedia says when they're going through that process. But ultimately, all of that reflects on the hotel. So it might be somebody else's issue, but sometimes it's helpful just to step up and say, we will do everything that we can to communicate this to make sure that it doesn't happen again. Or we have taken steps on our end to more clearly communicate the offerings that were provided to you, or whatever the case may be. So take ownership. If you're having a difficult time because people aren't having a clear expectation of what they're booking when they book through those third-party sites, maybe it means that you need to be more communicative with them at arrival, or maybe it means that you need to try and be able to reach out to these guests beforehand. A great example of this being implemented across other properties is the Cosmopolitan in Las Vegas. It's an autograph collection property. Some of you may have even been there before or worked there, who knows. But the Cosmopolitan in Las Vegas is not a family-friendly property. They have raging parties all night long. People go there for bachelor parties and bachelorette parties, but they have really good reviews. So people will just go because it seems really cool to stay at the Cosmopolitan in Las Vegas. They had been getting such negative feedback from people looking to have a romantic, quiet night away that they implemented a really interesting process. In advance of your visit to the Cosmopolitan, once you've booked a reservation, you get a pre-arrival email that communicates that, hey, just want to let you know, we have a really lively atmosphere here. And they just straight out say it might be loud and it might be noisy. And it gives those guests an opportunity to book somewhere else. Now, you may look at that and say, wow, why would you have people go stay at another property? But we want to be in business with people that are the right fit for us. So if we need to be forthright and say, hey, I know you're coming in for a nice romantic weekend away, but these weekends we have hockey teams and cheerleaders in the hotels. It might be a little noisy. We're going to do our best to place you in an area of the hotel that will be quiet. However, if you want to we wouldn't be able to guarantee that to you. So if there's a service that you're not going to be able to provide to that guest, or an experience that you're not going to be able to provide, just be honest. Give them the opportunity to make the decision if it's the right fit for them or not. So again, taking ownership can happen before a guest has stayed, during their stay, or in the review responses afterwards. And it applies to both what you communicate to the guest, so communicating that you're taking the ownership of that experience that they've had, even if it was an OTA reservations desk or the brand reservations desk, and also taking ownership in implementing any changes. Okay, so that kind of covers all of that. Are there any questions so far? I'm going to give it just a couple of seconds because I know that there's a delay. Debbie, thank you. I'm glad you were able to clear everything up. Okay, any questions so far? If you all don't have questions, just let me know that you do not, and then we can continue moving forward. All right, any questions so far? Okay, cool. Thank you, Doubletree. I appreciate that. Okay, so I'm going to share a different screen quickly so that we can look at one of the tools. So there are a number of tools that we have at our disposal. The first and foremost, we have the Learn model and the review response template. Okay, sorry, I'm just taking a look at some of the questions that came through on the survey earlier. Okay. Yeah, long reviews do take some time, and it is hard to pick the biggest concerns out and address those. Okay. So again, I'm gonna swing over, bear with me just a moment. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and I'm going to start sharing my screen again. So bear with me just a moment. Okay, so this is our review response template. Let me zoom in on it just a little bit. You received it in the link, and you'll also get the Office version, the Microsoft Word version as well for your purposes. So the nice thing about this is you can just click off to the side of a section and it'll highlight that entire section for you to be able to copy and paste over. Again, we have greetings and thanks. Somebody had mentioned that they have a hard time replying to several reviews in a row that don't have much to say. It's hard not to use the same words. And while they utilize a template and make each review different, it's hard when you can't address much from their comments, which is very true. And that's where the customization section, so if I take a look down here, if it's topic specific, that's where that area becomes helpful. But you're right, there are only so many ways that you can say thanks for your feedback. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different ways, but you may come up with more. So it can be helpful to use personalize the templates a little bit more. So as you are kind of finding different ways to do that, then respond that way. The other trick is that sometimes there are going to be reviews that might not necessarily warrant a response. So if you have a Google review that comes in and it's a 5-star or a 4-star, and there are no comments underneath it, sometimes you won't need to respond. Other times you might get a lot of those and you want to respond to some of them to incentivize guests to respond, but there may be some that you don't have to respond to. This also helps with reviews that have lots of different things in them. So again, we talked about reading for understanding. Sometimes I will pull a review out and highlight the sections that I really need to focus on. But you also have the opportunity just to straight up take it offline and just say, I'd love the opportunity to address all of your concerns. Please reach out to us directly. That can be really helpful as well. So when you're trying to pull out the ones that are biggest or most important, think about the one that was the biggest hot button for that guest. So I hated this, or this was not good. Or alternately, like we said about addressing improvements, pull out the ones that you've made changes to, or pull out the ones that you see as hot button issues for other guests as well, ones that you're seeing come up a lot, and address that. But again, you can customize the review response template with any specific topics that come up for you a lot. So I have a few examples here, but you can customize them however you want. And if there's an area that you're seeing comments on a lot and you're having difficulty responding, again, don't hesitate to reach out and let me know. I'm going to pop over to our comments, and we'll give it just a couple of minutes for those questions to come in. But are there any comments that people get on a regular basis, or that you see that you have a hard time responding to? And while you're doing that, I'm going to pull up a couple of reviews. This is just on the Revinate page, this is reviews for all of the hotels that we have on the Revinate platform right now. So I'm just going to sort through. We'll start out with a nice easy one. So I'll go with a nice 5-star. And I'll zoom in a little bit. Let's see if we can find a nice long one. That one's a little bit better. So we're going to start out with this one here. So I'm going to paste this into the chat box. So we're going to use our review response template. So I see still no questions coming in. I'm going to paste this into the review response template. 5-star. or not the review response template, into our chat box. So I'm sending over a review that of course is too long. Bear with me just a moment. So this is a 5-star review. Take a look at it and go ahead and type what you think would be a response. I'm going to give you guys a couple of minutes for that. And while we do that, I'm also going to pull up the responses that you all sent over for the 5-star reviews. So we'll take a look at some of them together. So the one that I sent out to you all, that other nice 5-star review was, "Thank you for your positive feedback. I'm pleased to hear you enjoyed your stay with us. We'll share your great comments with our staff members. Open by thanking the guest for staying at your property. Advise the guest of the appropriate departments have been notified of their kind comments. Wish the guests well and thank them for staying at your property." You can tell Ebony did exactly what she normally does. She's got her template in there. She included her signature. And that's one thing that I didn't mention earlier. When you're notifying the guest and we talk about being genuine, share who you are. It's important if the guest is sharing their experience, their very personal experience, good, bad, or otherwise, you want to be able to share that you personally care about their experience with you. So put a name with it. Yes, you may get called. Yes, somebody may ask for you when they check in, but there's nothing, absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I can assure you, after having done this for a number of years now, that I've never had anybody call me being personally vicious or upset or anything like that. Oftentimes, anybody who's going to reach out to you, it's because they know that you care and that you're on the same side and that they want you to help them. And they know that you can or think that you can. So that's why they'd be reaching out. So these are all really good, these 5-star reviews. This one had mentioned that they were a very pet-friendly hotel. So I like that the property here mentioned the 4-legged guest. That's a great way to personalize that. And Ebony looks like this. Yeah, it looks really good. There are a few ways to personalize things like this. So again, they mentioned that it was very pet-friendly. So as Brian did here, you have the opportunity to include the little blurb about their 4-legged guest. And Kevin at the DoubleTree kept it nice and short and sweet. I like, Brian, you did a great job on yours. I really like it. It came out really good. So I'm going to take a look over here and see if we have any questions so far. No questions, no comments about the review. So again, when you have a positive review, I'm going to give you an example here. We often travel around the country for different experiences, whether it be for family, pleasure, or business. We always attempt to stay at the Embassy Suites when available. The staff has always been the best they can be, whether they're asking for a different room or helping with another blanket. The accommodations are always top-notch. Just recently, we stayed at the Embassy Suites. We will be there. While we were there, we were able to see Oklahoma City Thunder play. Upon our return to the hotel, the 2 young boys were elated about the game and told the staff. Everyone took great interest in letting them tell their story. What a great crew. So again, with a review like this, we start off by sharing our appreciation. Thank you so much for sharing your positive experience with us. Then you can personalize it. So going through the listen process, we're so glad that you and your family were able to join us for your trip to Oklahoma City, and that your positive experiences keep you coming back. It was great to share the OKC Thunder story with the boys, and we look forward to welcoming you back soon. You can also include, if you want here, they mentioned about the accommodations being on point, but they finished off with what a great crew and talked about the interest that the staff took in them and the way that they always try to stay there, and the staff's always been the best they can be. So again, it sounds like the focus for me, the most important thing that they mentioned here that they've reiterated multiple times throughout the review is the staff. So again, starting off by thanking them for their positive experience. You can say something to the effect of the staff strives to provide the best experiences possible. We're so glad that we were able to share the excitement with your boys about the Thunder game. So again, focus on the family, focus on the positive experience with the staff, and then kind of finish it off from there. And then you can always say, we look forward to continuing, or we appreciate your loyalty, and we look forward to welcoming you back again soon. So again, has the guest stayed with you before? Are they likely to stay with you again? Have they continued to be a loyal guest because they appreciate the service that you've provided? So again, that's a nice kind of way to respond to that. Any questions about that? I'm going to take a look at the chat box. Great response, Brian. Wow, thank you for this amazing review of your recent stay at the DoubleTree by Hilton. We pride ourselves in a high level of service, and we will most certainly be sharing this review with the entire team. We greatly appreciate your business and are thrilled to hear everything went great for you and the boys. We will definitely see you back on your next trip to the city. Best regards, Brian Murphy, Director of Front Office Operations. Perfect. Great job, Brian. Thank you so much. So again, we covered all those same points that I just mentioned, focused on the family, focused on the staff, and expressed their appreciation. The way in which you do that can change depending on your brand. So the Intercontinental or the Henry will have a much more polished and professional way to communicate, but the Holiday Inn and the DoubleTree might be able to be a little bit more fun and casual depending on your brand. So bear that in mind when you're responding to those reviews as well. Okay, so I'm going to move on to a 3-star review. We're just past our time. I want to hit the 3-star and the 1-star review really quickly, and then we will wrap up. So we'll take a look at this neutral 3-star review. I'm sure some of these will have no comments at all, but we'll take a look and see what we've got. Convenient and comfortable. The hotel is located next to the airport, making it a place to stay when flying. It's very well maintained with rooms that are very comfortable. The honors floor is exceptionally quiet, clean, and great rooms. So again, with this neutral experience, it appears that, why is it coming up with a 5-star? Bear with me just a moment. Strike that. That's better. Okay, so clean and free breakfast, but $27 a day for parking seems expensive. So with a review like this, again, the property was clean and they had free breakfast. So the first thing that we would do, for those of you, I'm going to paste this in the chat box that you have reference to it. So you have the opportunity here to, again, focus on the positive stuff. So that, thank you so much, Liz. Thank you so much for sharing your feedback. We are so glad that we were able to provide a clean experience. We appreciate the importance of value when you travel, which is why we offer complimentary breakfast. And then valet parking is a little tricky, so you can determine how you'd like to do that. With this property, the Holiday Inn, the price for valet parking is at or below that of all of their competition. And there are local garages available. So we appreciate the importance of value when you stay, which is why we offer complimentary breakfast. The valet parking cost is at or below that of our competition. We will use your feedback to help guide us as we continue making future adjustments to those charges. So you may change it if it gets to be outrageous and the parking garage stops charging you as much for parking, or insurance rates go down. You may be able to reduce those rates. But for a guest to know that you have done your best to keep those prices as low as possible is helpful. And again, welcoming them back. We look forward to a chance to welcome you back. Not great, older, downtown, good area, close to people mover. So Katie, thank you so much for sharing your experience. We're so glad that you found the location to be perfect for your visit to the city. Please know that we're making improvements to the property, and we look forward to an opportunity to continue improving upon your experience. In a case like this, you might say, please reach out to me directly so I can get more information about the rest of your stay. So again, neutral review, some additional ways to respond. Good. The food in the restaurant, bad. We left a personal item and a staff member stole it. Okay. So in a case like this, Randy, thank you so much for sharing your experience. We're so glad that you had a good time in the restaurant. Please know that we take safety and security very seriously. It depends on what you know about this experience. If the guest reached out to you directly or whatever the case may be, but theft is a big claim for somebody to make. So you'll want to tread lightly with things like this, pest complaints. But again, you want to reinforce to other guests or reassure other guests that you take safety and security very seriously, and investigate all claims. This will really depend on the guest experience. If you know this particular ambassador, or not this ambassador, if you know this particular guest, if you're able to pull up their booking information and anybody recalls, that will kind of determine the way that you'd respond to it. But you do, of course, want to take anything like this very seriously. So and the trick with this is because it's a booking.com, you wouldn't be able to ask them to reply back, but you may say, we will follow up with you to ensure that this doesn't happen again, or we will follow up with you to share more details about the situation, or we'll follow up with you to resolve the situation. And in a case like this, you may have, the guest may have lost the item and you may have reimbursed them for it. So you may be able to say, we're so glad we had the opportunity to speak with you and resolve this situation. So that covers those neutral reviews. I went through a few of them. Any other, yeah, it's really good. Any other questions about neutral reviews? I know that some of you had expressed that you have some difficulty with them. Lots of problems, long reviews, several in a row that don't have much to say. And then for ones that don't have details of the issues that occurred, like this one, not great. You can ask them to reach out to you directly. Bad. We arrived after 6 and there were no clean rooms, had to wait almost an hour, was late getting to the event we were in town for. There were several other patrons waiting for rooms also, very poor operations, rooms were stuffy and AC was not working well. So you have the opportunity in an instance like this to, talk about what you may have been able to do at the front office. Perhaps this is something that you need to address with the team. You may implement a housekeeping or front office operations change to make sure that guests don't get held back from their events. So. Any other questions so far? I'm not seeing any come in. I'm going to take a look at a nice negative review, and then we will wrap up for the day. Again, if you have any questions, please reach out and let me know. So we had this 1-star guest review that I posited to you all to respond to. So the first one here, pleased you found your parking setup was convenient. I sincerely apologize you had a negative experience with our front office staff. It'll be addressed with the team. We'll follow up with our housekeeping and engineering teams to identify your room assignment and address your concerns with them. So that's perfect. Again, it gives you the opportunity to pull the positive stuff to the top. The one thing I would say is generally ask them to reach out to you directly. So I see here, somebody said, "Dear traveler, thank you for staying with us and for sharing your comments. We try to make every visit memorable by providing the best comfort, the friendliest service, and the best of amenities. I'm sorry your experience didn't reflect this. Please contact me directly so I have a chance to follow up with your concerns." So that's a good one. You have the opportunity asking them to follow up with you. Taking a look at some of the other 1-stars that we got in. Thanks for your feedback. Truly sorry to hear that you had a terrible experience when interacting with our desk. We pride ourselves in a high level of service. We've made our housekeeping director aware of the issues you presented regarding the room, and I'll also be following up with you personally offline so that we can make this right for you. Perfect. That's great. I like the offline follow-up. Thanks for taking the time to share your review. I'm sorry to hear of your issues. We take pride in our hotel. So again, Kevin, with this one, we have the opportunity to do a little bit of personalization with it to talk about their specific issues. So we're not just copy pasting our template. And yeah, I like this first one that says, we're pleased you found your parking setup convenient. That's a nice call out. Again, pulling the positive to the top. So let's take a look at one over here together, and then we'll wrap up. Wish I could rate my stay higher, but due to a number of issues that arose during my stay, cannot. After arriving at 4:30, I was left waiting an hour and a half to actually get my room key. I found out later they had done this to numerous guests due to the rooms that had not been cleaned from the prior guests. The purpose of my stay was to attend an event at 7 p.m. Little time to get ready. No attempt was made to make the inconvenience better. I had to ask for points. I was told by the waiter to move from a table I was sitting at, even though there was nowhere else to sit. A knock at 9:30 a.m. by the cleaning staff added insult to injury. And it looks like they called Adam out specifically, who's the general manager of that property, which is great because we have a name and it gives us the opportunity to reach out to them specifically. We also do have the opportunity to reply to this guest directly on Google to be able to ask them to follow up with us. So again, for something like this, you can call out a few things. So you have the they wish they could rate their stay higher. So we have high expectations for our staff, and we're disappointed that we didn't meet those expectations for you. We are implementing changes to ensure that our guests have the opportunity to prepare themselves for a night out on the town. And we will, yeah, I mean, this would depend also on what your property is doing to remediate the issue on property. Okay, so with those negative reviews, again, the other nice thing that you can do is just ask the guest to follow up with you directly, or as Brian did in his 1-star, let them know that you're reaching out to them directly to follow up. I'm going to take a look over. Are there any questions out there? I'm going to change my screen share really quickly. Okay, so we've already gone through some examples of 1, 3, and 5-star. You all had some great responses, and I hope that you were able to see opportunities to personalize those a little bit more or utilize the templates a little bit more. I know somebody had mentioned that they don't find the review response templates helpful, so I certainly hope that being able to personalize them makes that a little bit easier. Are there any additional questions, comments, thoughts, or reflections before we wrap up for the day? I'll just wait just a moment for those to come in. So I'm just taking a quick look. Everything was helpful. You're welcome, Kevin. Any other questions from anybody? Again, thank you all for taking the time to fill out the survey. I'll follow up with any of you directly who had specific concerns that I wasn't able to address. Let me just take a quick look about the final questions that you had asked as well. None at this time, no questions at this time. There's a really good question here. We took over for a person who did the reviews. How far back should we go to respond to old reviews? Some are over a year. I've done the same and taken over for other social media and reputation champions in the past, and that really depends on the particular property. If you have a lot of reviews on that particular channel, there's really no need to go back and respond to old reviews if you're getting new reviews regularly. So in the case of, if we use TripAdvisor as an example, if you're getting reviews every day, every other day, you don't need to go back over a year. Usually I'd say within a year is probably pretty good to go back if you can. The nice thing is that it's February now, so we had a nice slow season that we're just hopefully, or depending on your property, we're, you know, potentially just coming out of a slow season. So you might not have as many to go back and respond to. But if it's any well over a year old, generally I'd say you don't need to respond. Big exceptions would be any very negative reviews. There have been times where I've gone back 2 or 3 years to reply to a negative review and just say, hey, just wanted to let you know, we have had some changes at the property. We've undergone major renovation. These issues that you experience should no longer be happening. We look forward to a chance to welcome you back. So for really negative ones, I might go back farther, or on in cases where you don't have a lot of reviews. So Yelp is a good example of that, where you might only have a few a year. So it might be worthwhile to go back a little bit farther. And I hope that's helpful. Any really negative reviews or any channels that you don't get a lot of comments on. And Brian, yes, that would be wonderful if you would email me your template. I'll add all of your responses to the current review response template, and then those will become available to everybody else. So if there are no other questions, I just want to, again, express my appreciation for everybody taking the time to be here today and yesterday and the day before. If you have any questions after the conclusion of this training, please don't hesitate to reach out to me and let me know. You should already have my email address, but I'm going to share it anyway. You all should get that because I'm time traveling right now. You're seeing me a little after I've done stuff. So again, if you need anything at all, please don't hesitate to reach out to me and let me know. And again, you'll be getting follow-up from me about access to platforms that you might need access to, setting up monthly and quarterly calls for your property, and then invites to our monthly Reputation Call of Champions. Again, if you have any questions, reach out and let me know. Otherwise, thank you all so much for taking the time to be here today. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you all again soon.